let's read the facts. I need one. May I borrow yours, Bentley?
Yes.
Temporarily. The following income statement information was taken from the real financial statements of Pillsbury Company. I stole this out of an old textbook. I'll just confess that right this minute. It was so good, I thought it was worth sharing with you, okay? In the back of our textbook, there are some annual financial statements. There are tons online. One of the things that would be gratifying for you, I would hope, is that if you would go and look at a real set of financial statements, you would see a whole lot of information that you were exposed to this year, some of which you've mastered. That was the whole point, was to try to get you ready for real things when they occur. And you have experienced that to a greater extent than you probably fully appreciate. We're going to work with some real numbers here. There's an income statement. There's a breakdown of the classification of certain costs that we've incurred. I'm wondering if that income statement is absorption costing or variable costing. I'm wondering if you've got an opinion that you could back up with an observation, some facts. Who'd be willing to talk to me about? Is this income statement absorption costing or variable costing? Who's willing to venture a guess? Yes, sir?
I said absorption.
What makes you think so?
Because they usually have variable costs and expenses when they're doing variable.
Yeah. And it usually has fixed costs and expenses.
Yeah.
But neither is shown.
At the bottom, though. Don't
Yeah.
they specify that?
That might be true, but I think there's a better way, and it's not so obvious on this sheet of paper. It might be something that you learn someplace else that I'm asking you to apply here. What's our usual test for deciding whether it's a variable costing or absorption costing?
Well, what I was going to say is that if this is a real financial statement, and it's GAAP, then it has to be absorption costing.
Thank you for getting us to the right answer quickly. This morning we heard all sorts of conversation about gross profit or contribution margin or the format of this financial statement and all those other things that are peripheral to this decision. This is called a single-step income statement. There's no subtotal in the middle named gross profit or contribution margin. We can't rely on the test that we became accustomed to identify whether this is absorption or variable costing. We had to rely on something else, and the answer I heard, the correct answer I heard was, if this was a published financial statement, then we had to use absorption costing to get there. And I told you it was. How do we get this information if it wasn't a published annual report? It has to be an absorption costing income statement. So no wonder instruction 1 was to prepare a variable costing income statement. And if you're going to be a note taker, there's not enough room for you to do a whole income statement there, especially if you put the heading. So how about we skip the heading and you help me prepare this same information reformatted into a variable costing income statement. Where are we going to start? Everybody in the room that knows said sales. And the difficult part of that is that we got some really, really, really big numbers here to work with. That 6190.6 figure expressed in millions is really 6,190,600,000, isn't it? I have no concept of what that means. I can't relate to a million. 6 billion, I have no clue. I just know that's a lot of dough. So let's start with sales and reduce sales by, how about you helping me out? A volunteer handout quickly. Make up for some time we lost with the technical difficulties. Let's go faster. From sales, we're going to subtract variable cost of goods sold. Variable cost of goods sold, we can determine by the information that's given here. How would you suggest that we do it?
I would say 80% of 4,322.
Below the income statement, it breaks it out. Cost of sales, 20% is fixed, 80% is variable. You suggested we go up to the income statement and find the cost of sales line, the 4322.3 million that's split. We're about to split it 80-20. I need people with calculators. Do you have me that number? I need a volunteer handout. Somebody over there? Paula?
3,457.84.
3457.8 million. Right, Paula? When we subtract that number from sales, what's the name of what we get? If you can name it for me, raise your hand, please. Paula just answered the last question.
Contribution margin.
That's a good wrong answer, if there is such a thing. That is not contribution margin, and it's not gross profit. What is the name of variable cost of goods sold subtracted from sales? You only heard it here. You didn't do it in your homework. It was in that Monday lecture 2 weeks ago. Everybody wants to whisper it to their neighbor, but nobody wants to talk to me about it.
Manufacturing margin.
It is called manufacturing margin. And it seems that the business world revolves around margins. So, y'all sit next to each other and you talk, and now you got somebody between you to remind you not to talk, and you're going to talk anyway? It's you that I'm hearing. I think it's these two guys in the front row, and I'm accusing them in my mind. And every time I look up, they're not talking, but I hear voices, and it's you two again. Whew. So, business world says margins, all sorts of margins. And here's one, manufacturing margin, that I edited out of the quiz. I think I've edited it out of the final. Would it hurt you to learn something today about margins or review something today that you might experience in real life that is not on the test? Hello? Do I get a response for that?
Yes.
Manufacturing margin is what we're making off the good before we consider other costs that we've incurred, other expenses. Somebody want to tell me what's next? Ooh, you faked me out. I could have sworn you were raising your hair and you were raising your hand and you were fluffing your hair. Here we go.
Would be the variable selling general and administrative expenses.
That's a question.
It is that.
It is that. How much were there? How are we going to find them?
You're going to take 60% of the total amount that.
The selling and administrative expenses in total were 1614.5, and you think
It's going to be 60%.
60% of that, you got me a number?
968.7.
968.7 million. $968 million of variable cost. Subtract it. Anybody want to tell me what you get? Or more importantly than the math, which everybody's capable of doing, is the name of this. Paula, I saw you volunteering for the question I asked, but could we talk about the name of this? What's this called, Paula? What's this called, everybody? This is contribution margin, which was the most important thing that we learned that week about variable costing. We want to know what contribution margin is. Contribution margin is the excess of the revenue that we earn over everything variable. Contribution margin is the amount that's left to help us cover fixed cost and provide a profit. When we start talking about variable costing, and the reason that we rearranged the information in this format, it was for this subtotal. This was the main reason we did it. It's contribution margin. Let's finish this income statement. What's next?
Interest expense.
Yes.
Variable part of it is 0%.
But in the order of things,
Yeah.
that's not the very next thing I'm going to do. You're right. It doesn't matter what order I put them in. What am I going to subtract from contribution margin? Help me.
The fixed expenses,
Fixed cost and fixed expenses. Which would you like to tell me about?
the fixed costs.
Fixed cost. How are we going to determine them?
You just take the 20% of the cost of sales.
So we've got the cost of sales figure 4322.3, 80% of which we've already labeled variable cost. The other 20% we now need to deal with. You have me a number?
Not yet.
Anybody got fixed cost? Raise your hand so I'll know I'm listening to you. Talk to me.
It's 64.46 or just 0.4.
That's not the number I got.
Yeah, we just rounded up to 4.
You said 64. I didn't hear the 8.
I said 64.
I'm so sorry I didn't hear you. Didn't make it up here. This is the number you were telling me?
Yeah.
Okay. Did I round correctly?
Yes.
Good. So, $864.5 million were fixed manufacturing costs. Now what? New volunteer? It ought to get easier. Okay.
Admin expenses 645.8.
You got how?
Stick to 1614.5 times 0.4.
It's the other portion. We took 60% of those here, and now we're dealing with the other 40% of those. Did I hear you say a number?
Yeah, 645.8.
645.8 selling and administrative expenses that are fixed. Are there other fixed costs here? Class?
Yes.
The one you named a minute ago? Interest expense? How much?
97.8.
It sounds like a good FM station to me. $1,608.1 million of total fixed cost. How are y'all doing? Good or not? Yes or no?
Yes.
Just taking notes? No response.
No.
I get to conclude whatever I'd like? Are y'all just taking notes?
No.
Grant,
I have a question.
please?
I guess I don't really understand why. I guess you got the 97.8 from the top part, but I don't get why is it 0%?
That's the way it was. Do you see it now?
Yeah.
Yes, do you?
Yeah, I get it.
I'm glad to explain it.
No,
All the others were split,
I
80, 20,
yeah.
60, 40. This one was 100%
Yeah, I
fixed.
get it.
It's okay to ask, Grant. I'm hoping everybody saw it. There's another appropriate question that I thought you were about to ask. Nobody's going to? Good. So, let's do contribution margin minus the fixed cost and expenses. Anybody got me a net income figure? Hand up. Here he is.
155.96.
Same or different than the one that we were given here called absorption costing? Same or different?
Yeah, it is the same.
Same or different, class? Why? I thought variable absorption costing gave us different answers.
No.
Why? Is this an I'd like to answer that question hand?
Yes, sir.
Please?
Because beginning inventory did not change. Or
How do you know?
Because absorption and...
You mean billions of dough here and the inventory stayed exactly the same? I find that hard to believe. Tucker, where's your hand up?
I was going to say ending inventory, but yeah.
That's technically the right answer. But it's the wrong interpretation of the answer. Good for you two and others who thought it and didn't raise your hand for realizing that ending inventory is the cause of the difference between the two net income amounts. Did we have any information in this handout about ending inventory?
No.
Does that mean we had no ending inventory?
No.
That'd be a really false thing to assume, try to logically figure out. This is a simple income statement, a single step income statement. Lots of times companies want to spare the people who are using the financial statements from all the details. They try to present it in as simple a way as possible. So there's no mention of ending inventory here for us to deal with. If there was a change in ending inventory, and I bet you there was, if we knew that information and recalculated it, we would get a different answer. But we're working with the information we have. Now, you know that's an important concept. So in your review this week, you need to seek out some problem that you can demonstrate that you understand how to deal with ending inventory. You ought to put that on your little personal checklist of something that you need to accomplish. You need to work an exercise where ending inventory is significant and matters. Let's do the handout. 2 says, calculate the contribution margin ratio. And I'm looking for a volunteer who's willing to tell me how to do it. I'm looking for a formula right this minute. Others of you can be thinking of how to do it with literal numbers from this problem. Help me. How do you get the contribution margin ratio? If you're willing to tell me, hold up your hand, I'm willing to listen. Nick.
Sales equals fixed cost plus variable cost.
Sounds like break even to me. Are you doing item 2?
Yeah, sorry.
Contribution margin ratio is what we're looking for, Nick. I'm looking for a volunteer. Here he is on the back row. Is correct. Thank you. Contribution margin divided by sales is the contribution margin ratio. Could I have somebody to say those numbers for me? Find me contribution margin in the solution of 1. Tell me what to do, Mr. Green.
You divide 1,764.1 divided by 6,190.
On the income statement we just did, contribution margin was 1764.1. And you said divide by sales 6190.6. Yes?
Yeah.
Did you do it?
No, not yet.
Who's done it? Talk to me.
28%.
28%. I didn't round consistently. But dealing with billions of dollars, I was afraid to round up. I was afraid to call that 29%. Do y'all feel what I'm feeling right now? Maybe we should have taken it out 2 decimals. I don't know. I was afraid we'd be too far off. I showed a decimal. 28.5% is the contribution margin ratio. Would you raise your hand if you know the percent of variable cost right this minute? Come on. How fast can you get your hand up? Give me the variable percentage at warp speed. Hands up. Who knows? Or knows how to do it? Come on. Who knows? I want to see. Please. Please. I've got a 4th. I was hoping for 3/4. Please. There are 2 ways you could come up with this answer. I wanted the quick answer to be the obvious reflex, I understand this so well that I'll never forget it answer. I think I might have heard it right here.
Yeah, 71.5.
How'd you get it?
It's like the complement of 28.5.
It's the complement of the contribution margin ratio. I didn't get to it last Monday, and I was upset by that. But I covered it the rest of the week, and I'm hoping Mr. Elliott did. The percent of variable costs and contribution margin are the complement of one another. Together, they add to 1. And the quickest, easiest way for you to know is to understand that relationship. If you're told variable cost, you know the contribution margin ratio. If you know the contribution margin ratio, you know variable cost. And I'm hoping you know it. Somebody want to tell me that answer? Oh, you just did. What'd you get?
71.5.
71.5. We could have determined another way. Tell me the other way to get it. Who's willing? Awkward in this problem, but possible. Come on, help me out. Help me.
Take your total variable cost divided by sales.
Do you mean that literally? Total variable cost? See, that's the problem I have. I think that this complement thing is a really good idea in this case, because here's the solution we did a minute ago, the variable costing income statement. We would have to sum this variable figure and this variable figure. Am I pointing correctly? It's variable cost and expenses. This sum divided by sales should come out to be 71.5%.
Correct.
If you're the curious sort, like you should be, you do it. But sometimes at this point, it's easier to accept some other answer, be satisfied with that, and wonder why we're not moving on. Brandy, you had your hand up to ask me a question a minute ago about the time I started this. Do you remember your question?
Yes, sir. Conceptually, when you look at the contribution margin divided by the sales, that 28% represents what exactly?
That's the excess that's available to cover fixed cost
Okay.
and provide a profit. It's just stated as a ratio instead of dollars.
So it's the
Contribution margin is that definition. This ratio is that definition. That 28% of sales is available to cover fixed cost and provide a profit. Okay? Who's got a question? Let's press on. On the handout, it says, are we on 4? Determine the break-even point in dollars. I need to know. Who could say the break-even formula for me right this minute? If I called on you, you have confidence enough that you could say it. Hands up. That was a large number, and I'm very thankful for that. Let's all say it. The break-even formula is sales equals fixed cost plus variable cost. Good. I need a volunteer who will help me out. Tell me sales in this problem. How about a hand up? Sales, Nick?
We don't know.
We do too. Sales are stated right there. That's $6,190.6 million, Nick. Yes, Nick?
No.
What's the matter, Nick?
It's actual? Or we don't know actual?
We do know actual. 6190.6 is actual sales.
We're not trying to find it.
Why'd you bring it up? What are we trying to find, Nick?
The sales for break even?
Do we know that?
No.
That's what we're asked to find. Sales at break even is the unknown. We're going to use the break even formula, sales equals fixed cost plus variable cost, to attempt to find this. Nick's correct in saying we don't know sales. Do we know fixed cost, class? If you look back on the income statement you did earlier and can read your notes, you should be able to find me the sum of 3 numbers. The percent of fixed cost, the dollar amount of fixed expenses, and interest expense, all of which we labeled fixed. That sum is what I'm looking for. If you know that sum, raise your hand. I'm listening to you.
160.
You're supposed to wait until I call you. Raise your hand and then I call you. Okay, say it.
1608.1.
Are y'all with me, yes or no? How about variable cost? Find me variable cost. Aaron.
71.5%.
So how about us going back to step 1 where the variable costs are, like I pointed at 2 numbers a minute ago, and have to add those 2 together, Aaron? Huh? Wouldn't that be all right?
You would totally variable cost.
I just thought we'd total the variable cost and put them in this formula. We can't plug in a known number?
Yeah.
Why not?
It's variable. We don't know what you sold.
We don't know sales.
Yeah.
We don't know variable cost. Way to go, Aaron. But we do know the variable percentage, don't we? Aaron,
We do.
what is it?
71.5.
So we could say 71.5% of sales. I've got an algebraic expression that every one of you in here is capable of solving. I challenge you to isolate the variable combined like terms and solve it, and raise your hand when you've done it. Let me see. Hurry. Hurry. I have an 1/8 of the people in here participating at the moment. Hurry. Hurry. I want a number.
Okay.
Oh, I'm just wanting a hand up to know a whole bunch of people have done this. Put your hands down. Roman, are you willing to tell me your answer?
Yep.
Say it.
5,642.46.
Say it again, Roman.
5,642.46.
5 $1,642.5 million of sales just to break even. That is huge. On the handout, it says determine the margin of safety in sales and as a percentage of sales. Could I have you, before we do that, give me some nice word description of your understanding of the margin of safety? Would you explain it to me? How do you see the margin of safety? What is it? I need a handout. Tucker?
The amount of excess sales over the break-even point.
Is correct. Joe?
Cushion,
The cushion. Explain that just a little bit more.
like the room you have between your costs or your revenue and your expenses that you can spare.
I loved everything you said except when you compared revenue and expense, because that made me think net income. It's two sales figures. It's a sales figure that we actually achieved and a sales figure at which we would break even. That's the cushion we're measuring. I liked everything else you said, Joe. Good job. Could you tell me what you would have said had I called on you? If you hadn't heard these two good answers and I called on you, what would you tell me about the margin of safety, Grant?
The amount of money you can lose, still break even.
And the only one word you said that I object to is money. It's not money. It's monetary terms. But I liked every bit of that. It's the amount by which sales can decline before you incur a loss. There are lots of different ways you could see this. If you see them in more than one way, you're more likely to remember it, understand it better. Let's calculate it. How about the formula? Somebody say the formula to me. Margin of safety. Say it.
Sales minus fixed expenses.
The actual sales that we achieve minus the sales at the break-even point is the margin of safety. Are you willing to say numbers for me? Go.
548.1. That'd be 5,481.
Is which one? Actual or break-even?
Sorry. Okay, I gave you the ending number. The actual sales is 6,190.6.
6190.6 million and 5642.5 million is sales at break-even.
Yes.
A difference of?
What's that?
A difference of?
548.1.
Auditors?
Yes.
$548 million of margin of safety sounds like a lot or not?
It's a lot.
It is a lot compared to my household budget and my standard of living. While I tell you a story real quickly, could you listen to the story and calculate that as a percentage for me and have the percentage at the end of this story, please? Don't be distracted. Who's heard of the Tylenol scandal? I'm not surprised that very few, if any of you, know this, okay? Usually after class, I go and read about it and refresh my memory again so that I know when and where and all that stuff, and I forgot to do that today. On a good day, I remember. There was an incident in our country, probably before you were born, or when you were a very young child, I think it was before you were born, where some idiot took Tylenol off the shelf, put poison in it, and put it back on the shelf in several locations. And several people died, and it caused this scandal of everybody panicking about Tylenol. I think Johnson & Johnson makes Tylenol. And they had to take all the Tylenol off the shelf everywhere, coast to coast, even though it was concentrated in a fairly small geographic area. The public had no confidence. We were all afraid to take Tylenol. We all threw away what we had at home and didn't buy it. Now, with that in mind, let's apply that to this situation. Let's say a news reporter's spouse, somebody who works for CNN or Fox News or ABC, this morning reached into the refrigerator and got a can of biscuits and wrapped that can of biscuits on the side of the counter and twisted that can of biscuits open and saw a dead mouse. That was the reaction I expected. Thank you. Not disappointed. How quickly does this margin of safety go away?
Pretty fast.
Before the sun sets today. Yes?
Yeah.
Did you catch the story about they're connected to the media and they don't have to convince somebody? That story is well known before the close of business today, and all the grocers are taking all the Pillsbury products off the shelf and they're going to the trash. Are y'all with me? What percent did you get? When you express this as a percentage, you got 8.9. I didn't round consistently. 8.9 sounds a whole lot better than this. I rounded up. 9%. Is a large margin of safety or not? Not at all. Not at all. $5.5 million of margin of safety at 9% is just not very much. Would you help me get all the extra handouts and all the attendance sheets down here, please? And have a nice day and take advantage of the week, will you? Use the week the way it was intended.